After a very disappointing performance in 2022, the Packers defensive unit now has some significant holes to fill due to free agency, poor performances, and injuries. Let's take a look. Welcome to the Packer Mentality Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Corrigan. It is my 1 year anniversary on this podcast this week, and I want to thank all of you who have listened or watched over the past year. Thank you so much for being here. If you've been watching my podcast, you probably aren't surprised when I tell you that the defense has been a unit that absolutely irritates me. To have a unit play so poorly when they have invested so much money and way too many high draft choices over the years is just inexcusable. And there is plenty of blame to spread around to the various front offices, including Ted Thompson and Brian Gutekunst, not drafting very well, to the coaching staff not developing or just not taking advantage of the strengths of their players, to the players themselves just not performing up to expectations. I know it seemed like they were playing better late in the season last year, but I really think that was more due to the ineptitude of the competition. But we can talk about that in a later episode. In less than a week, Brian Gutekunst has a chance to bolster the roster with some inexpensive talent through the draft. So we're going to take a look at what needs to be done. Let's start in the back and talk about the big need Green Bay has at safety. The two preferred starters from last season were Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage. Adrian Amos had a down year. His contract was voided, and he is now a free agent. And that also left the Packers with a cap hit of $8 million worth of dead money. At this time, he is still a free agent. Still a possibility he could be brought back if the Packers can't find someone else, and he was willing to come back on a very budget-friendly deal. Darnell Savage is entering the final year of his rookie deal, and I don't see any way the Packers keep him around past this season based on his play the past couple years. He was benched about halfway through the season last year in favor of Rudy Ford. He did regain some playing time late in the season, working at the slot corner, did a pretty decent job there, but I think they would trade Darnell in a heartbeat if they could find a taker. His contract is a little bit much for what they're probably going to get out of it. Rudy Ford is the only remaining player on the roster currently listed as a safety that I believe could be competing for a starting job. The other safeties on the roster, guys like Tariq Carpenter, he was a rookie last season, Ennis Gaines, Dallin Levitt, Tavarius Moore, who just was signed as a free agent, and James Wiggins. All of them are primarily special teams guys, and I don't see them as real options as starters. Packers can probably get by with Rudy Ford or Darnell Savage at one of the safeties, but they definitely will need to bring in at least one, possibly two safeties in the draft. Now, it does seem like Green Bay is in pretty good shape at corner with Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, and Rasul Douglas, but Stokes got hurt last season and didn't return, and it appears that his injury was worse than it appeared at the time. If he isn't ready for the start of the season, and I haven't heard any updates on when he will be ready, Rasul will take his spot outside until he does return. Now, if Stokes is ready for the season, there has been some talk that Rasul Douglas could be moved to safety to help bolster that position. I would rather that would be done in training camp rather than halfway through the season to give him time to basically acclimate to that position. Keyshawn Nixon returns to help with the slot corner, so you would still be okay with the starters with Rasul at safety and then Stokes and Jair on the outside. But after that, it's Shamar Jean-Charles, Keandre Thomas, Corey Ballantyne, and practice squad guys Tyrell Ford and Benji Franklin listed and competing for depth spots and special teams. The Stokes injury or moving Rasul to safety could put corner as a position of need, requiring at least one draft pick, possibly two. Quay Walker and Devondre Campbell are returning at starters at inside linebacker with Isaiah McDuffie and Eric Wilson as depth. They did lose Chris Barnes to the Cardinals. Barnes was a solid backup, but this is not a position of need. But you never know. They might draft someone late to add to depth at that position. Up front is where Green Bay has some serious question marks. Defensive line returns Kenny Clark, but they lost Jerron Reed and Dean Lowry in free agency. Both of those guys played a lot of snaps in 2022, whether you like them or not. First round pick Devontae Wyatt didn't play much early in the season. He did come on late, and he's going to be heavily relied upon in 2023. TJ Slayton was a rotational guy last season. He could also see a heavier load, but neither of those two guys are definites that they can develop enough and take on all those snaps. Chris Slayton also is going to be competing for playing time. Other than that, the only other name on the roster is Jonathan Ford, who was a rookie last season and did not see the field. This unit definitely needs some help. A veteran free agent and possibly one or two draft picks. On the outside, at outside linebacker, edge rusher, the Packers return most of their guys. Preston Smith, but he is probably in his final season as a Packer. Rashan Gary, who is coming back from his injury. Kingsley Enagbare, who was actually really good as a rookie coming in to pick up the slack when Gary got hurt. Justin Hollins, who came over as a free agent in the middle of last season. The Packers did re-sign him. He was pretty solid in his short period with the team. Jonathan Garvin and Ladarius Hamilton also return, but they are not guaranteed to be on this roster. I would not be surprised, considering Rashan Gary's injury, to have the Packers draft at least one edge rusher. All this means that the Packers will probably look to draft two safeties or at least one safety and one cornerback, two defensive linemen, and at least one edge rusher outside linebacker. That's going to mean 5 new faces for the defense in this draft. The front office definitely has their work cut out for them starting on Thursday, and it's going to be very interesting and very exciting for the future of this franchise. I will do one more episode before the draft. I have it mostly ready, but I'm also getting my things together because I will be traveling to Kansas City to be on site for the draft on Thursday and Friday. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. I will talk to you in a couple days. Until then, have a great weekend. Be safe and go Pack Go.